Hi Liz, so I'm a sophomore. I work with Tony Brown as his communications assistant, and I'd just like to ask you a couple of questions today about your current job. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so what are you currently working on? What do you do right now?
So I work for an organization called Catchafire. We are a social enterprise, and our mission is to provide talented individuals and professionals with meaningful and impactful volunteer experiences. So we do capacity building for nonprofits and social enterprises across the country by matching them to professionals who want to give back their time and their skills, specifically pro bono. And my role within the organization is the strategic partnerships manager, which means that I manage all of our relationships with foundations, incubators, nonprofit associations, networks, and any hub that's able to help us identify the best organizations to work with our professional community.
Okay, wow, that sounds so interesting. What type of organizations do you work with?
So we work with big and small, for-profit, nonprofit, but all of them are aligned in that they have a social mission. Mm-hmm. They have a leadership team that's really eager to enhance the organization's impact in the coming year. And then they also have a results orientation and a track record of results. Okay. So it's folks that are as big as City Year and Year Up and the United Nations, mm-hmm. down to early stage startups that want to get growing.
Wow. And what's most rewarding about your job?
Most rewarding is probably that I have this incredible ability to learn because we're still very young and small. We have 25 people and we're kind of in startup early growth phase, which means I am learning so much every day. Mm-hmm. I'm soaking it in. But then also I have the ability to fail because as an early stage organization in a market that's changing, we are always trying new things and we're adjusting our model, and that means we as individual employees can also adjust ourselves and see what works. And I have a team and a boss that's just supportive of me going through that process, which I feel really lucky to have.
Yeah. And as you go through that process, what's the most important skill that you learned at Duke that you apply in your everyday life working with Catchafire?
That's a good question. I spent some time thinking about this morning. I think it's a combination of resourcefulness and initiative. So I see all of these young professionals where they get asked a question they don't know the answer to, and their response is, I don't know. And the real response should be, I can figure it out. So having the initiative to say, I'm going to figure this out and make myself useful despite my lack of experience, and then going down the rabbit hole to find the answers or figure out that they're asking the wrong question and bring great information to people who also don't know the answers. It puts you on a level playing field.
And can you just talk about a little bit about the things that you were involved with at Duke?
Sure. So,
what was your experience like?
Hart leadership program, obviously. A Tony Brown student, took 2 of his classes, went through the incubator. I was also big into a cappella, so Lady Blue, alto. And otherwise, I did a lot of yoga. I was very interested in French and international affairs and social entrepreneurship, started a couple of initiatives, joined a sorority for 2 months and then dropped out of the sorority. So a big mix. And then service in Durham. That was a big part of my experience too.
And what did you do straight out of college? What steps did you take that led you to where you are today?
So I failed big time. I went to graduate school. I got accepted into some prestigious French program at Sciences Politiques and thought it was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down. And so I started my graduate program there in Paris and then realized that it was an incredibly academic environment. I had never really had a chance to get my hands dirty. And so I dropped out of school. I moved back to Durham, got hooked into a startup there called Bull City Forward that another one of my Hart leadership classmates was working on with Christopher Gergen, and said, these people are working in a space that I want to be in service to society, and I'm just going to latch on for dear life and see where it takes me. And then very soon after that, received an offer to work with Duke at the Hart Leadership Program and spent 2.5 years working with Tony Brown there. So that was my bumpy path after graduation.
And what accomplishment are you most proud of that happened along that path or recently? Or
It's a good question. Tony Brown always taught me to think in terms of accomplishments. I think I have a lot of small but significant accomplishments for early in my career. But probably the biggest one for me and most recent one is at this current job. So when I first came to Catchafire, we were speaking about ourselves as a membership organization for nonprofits to join. And what that did was it communicated to our organizations that we're working with that they were purchasing entry into a community and receiving a lot of benefits. And it was this transactional relationship. And from my experience working with nonprofits through Duke and through Bowl City Forward, I feel like I had learned that the community deserves a more even playing field, a little more respect, a little more acknowledgement of the two-way street that comes from working with a nonprofit. And very early on in my time here, started talking to people about how membership might not be the best word for us to use, that really what we're doing with organizations is putting a stake in the ground and saying your goals are our goals and let's work together on these, which means that we're partners. You're not a member, we're partners. And what's happened is we've had a lot of conversations as a team, we evaluated our language, and then slowly went through a rebranding process. And now all of our organizations are our partners, and that language is reflected all down the ways that we communicated with them, and it's also reflected in the way that we interact with our partner organizations and we think about our community. Mm-hmm. I don't think that was my accomplishment alone, but in terms of leadership and how we learn about that at Hart Leadership, I would say it's a place where one person can get things moving in the right direction and then help others realize that there's a different way to be doing something.
Yeah, I can definitely hear Tony Brown's words in some of that language.
Tried and true, trained by Tony Brown.
Yeah. Well, what was it like to make the decision to quit graduate school and come back to Duke? Do you regret it at all, or was it something that you think you had to do? Like, especially for students who are on this clear track where they're going to graduate from Duke and then go on to graduate school, like what piece of advice do you have to give them?
Oh, that's a good question. No is the short answer. I don't regret leaving graduate school. I'm so happy that I did, looking at what my past 3 years have been and how it was completely different from what I did when I was a student. I think my best advice, to finish answering the question, it was a hard decision to leave a prestigious program and to go do something that I had no idea what I was going to be doing. And yet I learned so much from being on the ground in a working environment that I am happy that I did not delay for another 3 years by going through a graduate program. However, it doesn't mean graduate school isn't the best path for some students to go through, especially if you know exactly what you want to do. But if you don't know what you want to do, the worst thing you can do is go into another environment where you learn knowledge that's supposed to help you do what you want to do. So I'm a believer in waiting on graduate school until you know what it is that you actually want to be using that knowledge and that network for. And in terms of advice for coming out of college, and if you want to serve others, do it. Don't wait. Don't say I'm going to work until I'm 40 and then I'll figure out how I want to give back. Don't go into consulting or finance because you think that you don't know exactly what you want to do, and so it's best just to get some skills. There are incredible ventures and organizations out there that you can give to and learn just as much from. And don't wait. Start living your life how you want to live it today.
Those are comforting words to hear.
Well, I'm also only 26 years old, so just one way to think about it.
Yeah. Well, what's something that you know now that you wish you had known while you were still at Duke?
Um, I wish I would have known, similar to what I was just talking about. I think I found it the bumpy way, but I wish I would have known about intersections. Ed Skloot, who works in the Center for Strategic Philanthropy, told me this once, which was go work at an intersection. So identify, all the different passions that you have and the industries that interest you and the people who you admire, and don't find the perfect place for you. Just pick somewhere in the intersection of those types of people and ideas and industries. And if you're at the intersection, you'll be surrounded by the people who are actually going to help you find your way. Whereas if you just choose the safe bet that is tangential to those interests or one of those interests, you run the risk of not meeting the people who are going to steer you in the right direction.
And what is leadership to you? What is your definition of leadership? What type of leader are you?
I have always really liked the Hart leadership definition of leadership, and that it's helping groups of people do different, difficult, complicated work. And at least what I've been told in the work experiences that I've had, and that's usually what I use to help define my definition of leadership for myself, is that I'm a leader by example. So never asking anyone to do work that I wouldn't do myself, never treating anyone in a hierarchical standpoint, but saying we as a team are working towards a goal, and therefore all of us can contribute to that along the way and help each other. And if we aren't helping each other define what success means and working tirelessly to get there together, then we're thinking about leadership in the wrong way.
And one last question. It's kind of difficult to answer in one word, or in one sentence, but what is your passion? What is the recurring theme in your life, if you had to pick one?
Oh, it's the best and the worst question. I've had so many conversations with people about this lately, about whether or not we force people to define what that means when they don't know, and if we're taking all of these competent individuals who are coming out of great universities who don't know what their passion is and forcing them to define it up front. I think, and you said this right now, it's hard to say in one word what your passion is, and that passion can change over the course of your life. And yet thinking about my intersection of the things that I care about, what I found is that I'm most energized and most happy when I'm helping others find their way. So at Duke, it was helping students figure out, what do you want to do when you graduate? What's the best way to spend your time and your energy when you leave Duke? And today it's working with nonprofits and saying, what are the goals that you're really striving for? And how can you act on those and get there? And it's being that listener and the contributor to getting someone moving in the right direction. And I don't know if that means one day I'm going to be a guidance counselor for a university. I don't know if it means that I'm going to be a nonprofit consultant, but it's this idea of listening, problem solving, and helping people realize that we're not just chipping away here aimlessly, that we're working towards something greater, and that if we are strategic about it and we keep our eye on the ball and we help each other, that social problems or personal problems are things that we can tackle and not just things to accept as a part of life. But it's a long-winded answer.
Well, it's a long-winded question. It's difficult to for me, it's difficult to wrap my head around.
Yeah, but it's a good one. If you don't ask, then you're never going to get an answer. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the interview, Liz. I'm sure all of us are going to get a lot out of your wisdom.
I don't know if there's any wisdom in there.
No, there's a lot of wisdom.
But it sounds like a great project to bring different interviews together and help Hart leadership people get to know each other by hearing each other's stories. So I love what you're doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Liz.
Yeah, thanks, Nati. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.